Hello, welcome to another Sunday morning jam. Just testing everything's connected. And hello, who have we got at the moment? Right at the beginning we got Patrick. Hello Patrick. Just turn down my low frequency microphone, or the low frequencies on my microphone. So today, as you can probably read in the description, and for those watching this on playback, which is usually most people, I'm going for a sort of budget semi-modular setup. And I think this you've seen before. These Behringer cheapies. Some people hate them because they're cheap and affordable and bring the masses into the world of modular. Some people love them, obviously, because they can afford them. So the Neutron here with its black faceplate. As I said, hi Patrick. Yeah, ready to ride. Yeah. So today, the same format as last week, really, just to talk through how everything's connected, and then if I get the urge and there's enough people listening, watching, then I'll do a performance. If not, then I won't. That's the way it goes. So, what was I saying? Yeah, so we've got the Neutron, the ModelD, modelled on the Moog synthesizer from Behringer. Got the Sequential 960 controller, which is Behringer again. It's got a switch, which I'm not using today, but that allows you to do some clever things with that. I've got a quantizer over here. I've got another small sequencer here, a little mixer, Doepfer mixer, 4-channel. Got the obligatory NTS 1, which is going to be used as effects, as usual, mounted onto the rack. Hello Philip. Good morning from South Australia, I believe. And the only other thing in the rack, apart from some malts, is the Behringer 110, which I was going to get rid of, but it's actually very useful for this little setup, as you'll see in a bit. And then down the bottom here, with the guest stars, so to speak, are the MicroFreak, which can be used for a multitude of sins, and then the Volca Kick, which is often some people see as a one-trick pony, but is actually quite useful for quite a few things beyond just kicks. And then we've got a Baby Yoda just sat here, kind of checking everything out. So he's just going to sit there quietly and not always doing the thing, we call it. I wish he'd stop doing that. So the sort of performance today, I haven't really got anything super planned in mind, but it's going to be showing off the sequencer capabilities of the MicroFreak and how that works with the sort of analog old school sequencers, and obviously a synchronized Volca Kick. And we'll see how we go with the performance. If I'm sort of in the zone, then I'll sort of carry on. If not, I'll cut it short. So the way, so let's introduce the instruments. So we've got the MicroFreak, which I've got some favourite presets, strings and various other things. The Volca Kick, a lot of reverb on at the moment. Let me just kill that. So the Volca Kick has got this Korg MS-20 resonator, which quite a few people know about, which allows you to create quite punchy kick sounds, and obviously it's got its own built-in sequencer. Then we've got the ModelD, which is being sequenced from the 960. So that's just playing one note at the moment, and hopefully you can see the sequencer happening there. I've talked through this sort of old school sequencer before, and how you can switch notes in and out. It's actually very similar to the active step on the Korgs, and if you remember last week's talk through, I went through the SQ1s, which had active step. This is a similar thing. The 182 can't do that, but active step being, there's one note, I can just bring in a second note, and then a third note in any order. Get rid of the third one, add two more over here, and then go into things like five steps. They sort of make sense over a constant beat, and of course they come alive when you add in a bit of delay. Hey Gary from North Illinois, I'll pronounce Illinois right. Hi Faulty Tenor, I thought you said Faulty Towers then. And Philip, the Baby Yoda is back. Where is his twin? Oh, he's actually got 3 Baby Yodas, so we have to take it in turns now. They can't fit on the screen, so this one's called Tappy because you tap his head and he comes alive. Anyway, where was I? Oh yeah, get rid of the... So that's the sequential controller, which is controlling the Model D, and the Model D, as you know, has 3 oscillators, so you can get some nice big fat sounds. 2 oscillators, 3rd oscillator, and LFOs and filters and all the usual shebangs that you get with analog sequencers. And you'll see me control the volume from the instruments themselves and also from this mixer up here. Then the other sequencer synth combo is the 182. Baby Yoda's going crazy over there. So this vertical sequencer here, which is linear, it hasn't got active step, is controlling the Neutron. So we can obviously control this oscillator. We've got 2 oscillators, so we can have a mix between them. Control the waveforms for each oscillator, and obviously the octave difference between them. I generally use the right oscillator most of the time, and then I bring in the second if I need it. I can actually trigger the second oscillator separate, which I've done in previous videos. Then the NTS 1 sort of going down. Oh sorry, this sequencer, yeah, I can... you can see it's the same sort of principle. I can just switch in extra steps here, and again it makes sense with a bit of reverb and a bit of delay, as does everything. And you can play them on the fly. I think I was doing that last week with the active step, just adjusting the pitch here. Hi Bill, good evening or morning. Yeah, it's definitely morning here. Misty Australian morning in the mountains. It's been the bizarrest summer ever. Obviously 2 years ago we had fires and it was super dry, and now it's like a tropical rainforest every day. It's kind of crazy. Right, so that sequencer, yes, I'll be playing with that as I usually do with sequencers. NTS 1 I've covered. I've just reintroduced this Behringer 110. I'll try and keep close to the microphone, it's a little bit far away. Let's try that one. So the Behringer 110 is really just, I think it sells itself as a single oscillator thingamajig. but it's actually got some very useful extra features. Mainly you can bring external sounds in. So in one mode it's just an oscillator. Got quite a range, you can go right down to that clicky low level. Hi Bill, yeah, so I've got mostly the factory ones, but the effects on the NTS one, so that was the question. And I've got a few more. I'm trying to remember where they're from. I've downloaded a bunch. Trouble is, every time I re-update the firmware, or I actually got some new ones of these, I've not uploaded the new ones. But I had a couple which I used quite a lot. One was called Breathe, which was like a reverb that went in and out, and a few others. So yeah, I do use them, but I tend to favour the space reverb. Let's put that on now. Hello, Todd About from Chicago, Illinois again. Lots of people from Illinois today. So what was I doing? Oh yeah, talking about the reverb. The space reverb is kind of cool. I use a lot. Probably make actually more sense on a bit of a sequence. So that's the space reverb, which is one of my favourites. And then everyone also, a lot of people buy the NTS one for the riser reverb, which is the sort of Strymon shimmer effect. "27 degrees faulty." Cool. Sometimes use the submarine one. But yeah, I tried like the... Oh, I have got some of the others on here. So here's Breathe. You can hear this one breathing in and out. Sine Vibes. Okay, I'll check those out. Theatre is a very big one. It's like a cave type reverb. Super big. Cathedral. But yeah, anyway, spend all day playing with reverbs, couldn't we? And yeah, so it's a great little toy. Obviously you can download reverbs, delays, all custom. You can make your own if you're good at, I think it's C# or C++. And obviously the waveforms, the oscillators, you can download a whole bunch. I won't be doing that today. But anyway, back to this Behringer 110. And what was I saying? So yeah, as well as the oscillator on here, you can input different sounds. So I've actually got the noise output from the Neutron, which is this little patch bay here, which is actually part of the same synth. So you can use this as external sound going out. So I've got that fed into another channel on the 110. And then because I ran out of inputs, because I've basically got on this 4-track stereo mixer, 4-channel, I've got ModelD, Neutron, the 110, and then the MicroFreak on 4. Sort of run out of channels, and I, like most people when they're setting up these little kits, they sort of go, oh, it'd be nice to have a drum machine, or it'd be nice to have a little solo instrument, and you sort of keep adding to it, and then you run out of inputs. Obviously I could have a big external mixer, but I like to keep things pretty portable, so this rack can actually go into a bag, and then I could put these two in a bag and actually take it completely battery powered if I wanted to. But anyway, what was I saying? Turn the mic up a bit. The Volca Kick is going into there as well, because there's you can go into the VCA. So there's 2 VCA ins and 2 VCF ins. But if I wanted to keep the oscillator, I can only use 1 VCF in and 1 VCA in. But that allows me to put in the kick into here. So I've now got the volume of the whole thing. So if I turn up, for example, the drone and a bit of the white noise and put a couple of beats on the kick, I've got control of that, the whole three of them from here. And you'll see me doing this on the mixing in terms of how I mix things together. I can obviously turn it, the whole three down there. Or I've got the individual controls. If I just want the white noise and the kick, just the kick, and then I can control the kick volume from the instrument itself. And I'll be doing a lot of that as I go through. So same with the Freak. Turn that off. And the other good thing with the 110 is it's modulation. It's got some modulation facilities. So again, using the Neutron patch bay, because it's quite a nice utility, this patch bay, even if you don't use it for the internal routing internally. So for example, I've got the LFO out here into this mult, which can just send the LFO to a couple of places. One of them goes to the pulse width modulation in for things like the oscillator, and then I've also got this one going into the filter, so you can get some nice little, and I'll explain how that's routed in a second. So just a quick to make modulation interesting, obviously an LFO is okay, but it's kind of regular. It just goes from side to side, even if it's like a sawtooth wave or a inverted sawtooth or a triangle. It's just going at a constant speed. So I've actually used the sample and hold output, which is kind of a random generator controlled by this little knob here, feeding the LFO rate, and that gives me this sort of effect. So it's always different. And remember, this is this oscillator, and it's just on constant at the moment. So it's like a drone. If I control the cutoff and the resonance, try not to go too far on the resonance, I'll explode everyone's ears. And of course comes alive like a riser reverb. And it's a good start to attract, perhaps you use it on the white noise. Gives it that mechanical feel. A bit too big on the reverb. And that allows you to, bring in some low strings. It's all it's all part of the palette. So when you're putting these systems together, you're often thinking, right, that'll be good for some ambient background. This will be good for some beats and driving the thing forward, sequencers. This would be good for melodic input and sequencing and that sort of thing. The clock, just have a quick drink. What's going on in the comments? Love the space, faulty. Cool. So just to, if there's any other questions as I go through, because like I said, I'll go into the performance in once I've finished doing this intro talk, explaining what's going on. I find it's more useful for me to explain what I'm doing, and then if people are interested during the performance, they can sort of check back, and I'll put chapter markers in to discuss which bits I'm talking about, so you can backtrack later. Very educational, sort of. What was I talking about now? Oh, the clock routing. Yeah, so this is a weird one. I'm using the NTS one as master clock, mainly because, well, one of the reasons is that I can actually see the BPM on the display here, see me adjusting it. So I'm going to a lazy 115 simply because on the delay, if I turn the time full, it It synchronizes to sort of crotchet eighths on the quaver, dotted quavers on the delay, so this effect. And it works quite good in ping pong mode, because then you're moving across the speakers. So that's the ModelD. So the BPM is controlled from that. That's sending a trigger out to the 182, and then the gate, so that's controlling the tempo here, so that's the 115 at the moment. The gate from that then goes into a mult and sends it to everywhere else. I'm actually waiting on a 2HP div, which is a clock, which allows me to take one BPM in and then have two separate clocks going out. Tiny little strip module, but it allows me to fiddle with it, and also have CV in, so I could take, for example, the CV from one of these tracks and control the clock, and that allows me to do things like ratcheting, so I'll explain that in another video. Knobs on the M1, yeah, these big knobs are useful. They come with just the stick sticking out, so it's obviously they expect people to buy things for them. I've gone with these because they actually get my fingers in between them. Some people have these ridiculously big ones. What was I saying? Yeah, the clocks. So the gate from this goes into a mult. It's sending two gates out to the ModelD because it has a separate trigger input for the envelope and the filter. Excuse me. There's another one going into the Neutron, and another going to the kick. These are these two leads sort of going around, and then another one going into the freak. And so everything else is pretty straightforward. You know, once these have got a clock, they just play, and that's the pulse. And the trouble is, at the moment, it's a single pulse going to these two, and which means I can't do any polyrhythmic things like I was doing with the SQ1. In fact, it would have made sense to have an SQ1 on the top here and do what I did last week, but for the moment, that'll do. Sequencing on the MicroFreak. So this is receiving an analog clock or a CV clock, so it's not MIDI. If it was MIDI, I'd be able to do some clever things like control the transport. But at the moment, if I turn the sequencer on, so this is one of the feels I'm going for in the piece, this sort of stringy feel. Turn the sequencer off. Simple melody. And the other thing with the MicroFreak, of course, is the aftertouch. So polyphonic aftertouch. You can see as I'm pressing, putting more skin on the note, it's opening up the filter in this sound. Anyway, back to the sequencer. So you can turn the sequencer on. You can delete a sequence. It's got two sequences, A and B. That's A, those sort of step things. I don't know if you can see that. And then the B sequence. So I switch it to the B sequence. Put sequence on. Switch it to B. And there's something on there. If I want to erase a sequence, I can just, in fact, let's just have a little beat going. I'll show you how sequencing on here works. Step mode. Erase, to erase a sequence, you press that and then you get your finger right. So I erased sequence B there. And then you can do various types of recording. Just get rid of the delay a second. You can put this into live record, so you just press that, you see it flashing. As soon as you start playing, it will play in time with the whatever the clock's coming in. And now it'll loop, hopefully. Or not. And obviously I don't like that one, so I'll press that and delete it. You're going to have sort of wettish fingers. Oh, this cup's useful. If your fingers are too dry, these don't register your fingers pressed, so that's kind of cool. Another thing I've noticed with this little setup is the clock signal. It's going through a non-buffered mult, and what that means is you are going to get some signal degradation as it goes down the chain here. So I might actually see if that causes a problem later. Basically what that means is that the clock coming out of, or the gate coming out of this one is being sent to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different outputs, and if it's not buffered, which means powered, it will cause some degradation of the signal, which is why that the Volca seemed to be acting a bit strange. We'll see how that goes. Might be interesting if it's missing the occasional semi-quaver or something. So back to the sequencer, yeah. So one of the problems with the sequencer is that keeping in time with an analog clock, because there's no transport controls. So I'll explain what that means. Got this basic beat going again. So we'll switch to sequence A. So you can hear it's sort of an 8th note out. It's kind of in now. It's interesting how this is skipping a beat. I might just reroute that one. Just going to reroute the gate from there, so it's earlier in this chain. Sorry, it's a bit Heath Robinson this. I'm just taking the gate, so it's a bit earlier. It's not making a difference actually. Let's see how we go. If we choose a different sound, then you can hear it probably when you switch between presets. If you've got a sequencer built in, it will remain on sequencer, so you're sort of stepping between them, changing the preset up here, and it keeps them in time with their own internal preset clock, because every preset on the MicroFreak can have its own sequencer length. I think I've set most of these to 32 steps, so that's kind of a nice ambient one. Sometimes you have to work with the clock from here, so I can use the clock and then actually play a beat in real time. So this becomes, it's a bit of a slave clock. This is going out of time as well. How can I fix this? What am I fixing? I should have used a buffered mult. I'll just leave it for now, see how we go. Everything might slide in time, but that's part of the fun of these things. Tonal axis. Yeah, I change the setup every time, so it's part of the fun, I suppose. Let's turn that down. The MicroFreak's always sort of floating. It's a nice little, comprehensive synth. It can be nice and melodic, so you can play with it. You can do some weird effects, loads of engines you can play with and create different sounds. This is sort of a standard, my other modular rack, a sort of cheaper budget sequencer type rack. You've probably seen the other modular rack, the smaller one, a lot more complex and expensive, but middle range modules, not some of the expensive ones. And then I've obviously got analog 4s, I've got the Hydra synths type setups, but yeah, it's changing all the time. And then I've got the Volca rigs. The kick is a bit of a floating Volca. The normal Volca rig I've got is keys, modular, beats, and the Volca mix. I think there's 3 of them really in the Volca mix in a nice rack. So yeah, it changes all the time. That's part of the fun, I suppose. What else should I talk about? So that's the basics of sequencing on this one. Like I said, the way I'm clocking at the moment is not brilliant, so I might knock it on the head if the performance keeps going out of sync and things. But we shall see. Sequencer basics on the sequential controller I've kind of been over a few times. One thing I like to do is change notes as it's playing. So for example, I could have this changing one of the notes of this just 2 sequencer while this just loops around. Likewise, bringing the Neutron sequence. I've panned the ModelD sort of to the left side of the speaker and the Neutron to the right. You can hear the MicroFreak is kind of skipping occasionally, but it doesn't really matter in this case. It's actually creating some interest, as in it's not the same twice, it's not just a loop. It's that was unintentional, of course. So that's sequencing on there. This is an old school sequencer, as I mentioned, but you can get all 8 notes going at once. Oh, sorry, 8 steps for this top row. With the switcher, you can basically tell it to move between rows 1 and 2 in sequence to create 16 steps. And that's done simply by taking the note output, note CV from these 2 rows into here, and then it will switch between the signal path or the CV. I'm just using the 8 steps for the moment because I like to, I think as you saw last week, just create the active step type thing, keeping it live and always changing. Because I think the danger is with any sequencer is just to leave it churning away indefinitely, stick a 4 to the floor drum beat over it, and then occasionally play a chord here and there, and it gets a little cliched, I suppose, to do that. I mean, there's cliches in every type of music. The 182 sequencer, I think I've been through it. That's pretty straightforward. It's just a vertical linear looping sequencer. The 110 effect modulation I've been through, so I've got a little checklist up here just in case I missed something. Oh, the Volca Kick, yeah, that's I think I've demoed the Volca Kick before, but it's a useful little device, as well as, you know, just playing kicks. It's got a pitch control, so you can actually go into the musical range. Let's record that in real time. I just need a bit of a pulse. So it can play up in the high range, and you've got some obviously control over the sound, particularly the resonance type thing. It's not my favourite sound, that sort of squelchy high mark. But most people obviously use it for a kick, and there's a few kick features as well as just playing that sort of thing. You can create sort of bass lines with it. You can hear that's tuned slightly. Don't know what sort of speakers you've got to be able to hear those low frequencies. You've got control over the decay, so you can have it nice and clicky. You can have it sort of tom-like. Does minor adjustments. And the other cool feature, which is great for performance, is the touch FX. You've then got some divisions, so as well as it playing that, in fact, let's put it into a straighter 4/4 type thing. The touch FX allows you to go in and, for example, suddenly have triplet beats. So I'm pressing the one there that says 3/1, and it's great for little fills where you can have and go back into the drum beat. Let's go into more of a 4/4 kick drum. And yeah, the other types of touch effects, you can get the obligatory Blue Monday, bit of a click on it. I think the idea is you use the touch effects with one hand while, say, adjusting a sequencer thing. Let's put a bit of modulation on that sound. Covering up my arm now. And you can do it. You can obviously do it so that you've got let's make that a bit more clicky. So you could do the Blue Monday type super fast drum beat and then bring in the second sequence, or the second step of a sequence. Third step. Oh, Mark's a bot, is he? Hello, Mr. Bot. Oh, Mark. So that's the other thing with, let's get rid of the sequence a second. So the other thing with the kick is also, the active step. I press active step. You can see it's got the 16 steps there. So if I suddenly want to go into a, let's say 14 steps, just get rid of 2 of them. And then back into the 4/4. That active step is actually a useful way of bringing things into sync. So if I, for example, put the sequencer on the MicroFreak, so you can hear this is slightly ahead or behind depending on your perspective, but I can get rid of a couple of steps and bring it into kind of a sync. That was just by getting rid of a semiquaver or 2 in one of the cycles. The other good thing with the sound on the sorry, on the drink. Just a coughing fit. Another good thing with the sound on this is motion sequence. So if you want, if I turn motion sequence on, that's now captured, I think, changing the pitch on this and the bend and the time. So I can just go into record and I'll overwrite it. So and record. So I just recorded the bend movement there, and then there's the time movement. How do you find, how do you like the Behringer D? How do you find the Behringer D? Yeah, it's kind of one of my go-to analog sequencers, simply because it's so knob per function. This is it playing at the moment. I'll just do a 3-step. Turn the sequence off. I like being able to mix in different things with it, so I rarely use sort of 2 oscillators all the time. It'll often be like one high oscillator like this, bit of reverb. I'll have the LFO controlling off in the filter just to give it some colour. And changing the waveforms on the fly, super easy. That's obviously a triangle sound. This is all on a single oscillator, by the way. And then the nice thing is I can, because it's got this built-in mixer sort of thing, I can then slowly bring in 1 or 2 octaves down. So it's a great little performance synthesizer rather than just set and forget type thing, which a lot of people do. You know, they're just after a good bass sound, but I'm constantly fiddling around with it. And one of the oscillators I use, because it's got this oscillator 3 control, you can actually turn it off and just have it on one note, regardless of what the sequence is doing. So that turns it into sort of kind of paraphonic. It's not true paraphonic, but it allows you to have 2 things going on at once. And then it's got noise as well, of course, so you can use in the mixer, because this is effectively a 5-channel mixer, so it's got, you can have these noise interludes. Let's bring in the noise over here as well. Just slow that LFO down a bit. So now the ModelD is acting as a sort of a rhythmic noise thing, very Schultz Tangerine Dream type thing. And the LFO. So it's a very traditional, and you can get very fat bass sounds as well. Just go into a quick fat bass sound, just do a... So you have 2 oscillators on the same note effectively, and then detune them slightly. See if it's in time with the drums. Turn the motion sequence off, because that's... So it's slightly out of sync there. That's where, again, the active step comes in. Just a quick adjustment. It's one of the problems of using an analog clock to external gear, because there's no... These don't know where the start of something is. You can do resets also on the analog gear, but let's turn the reverb off and the delay. So that's just the ModelD 2 oscillator. I think it comes alive when you really put some nice resonance on it. And obviously it's in the middle of the stereo with the bass, with the kick. Let's add the super low bass. So a bit of a demo of the ModelD there. Let's have a slow modulation. And that's on the the sawtooth waveform. If you go into the square wave, you get a bit more punch. Probably blowing the speakers there. Anyway, so I tend not to use it. Use it for super heavy bass lines like that. It tends to be much more sort of subtle single oscillators at a time, or at least 2 that are separated by an octave or 2. So yeah, it's, as Bill said, it's Behringer. You know, they get criticised for cloning things, but it's you know, the alternative if you want a 3 oscillator classic analog synth like this in the East Coast style with a low pass filter. It can be quite expensive for people, but when you can get these for 250 US, or I think about 400 Australian, even second hand now, you can pick them up for next to nothing. It really helps musicians, you know, play in this territory, which has usually been the domain of super rich musicians, or richer. What else am I covered? So I think that's it. So the performance structure, I think, like I said earlier on, just talking about the performance coming up. Generally, I don't know what this piece is gonna be like. As usual, I'll probably start with something ambient, gentle, using the white noise and some nice reverb and things just to create an atmos. Using that, might bring the drone in, perhaps a super low frequency like that. Occasionally perhaps manually hit a super low drum. Again, not having that looped and just playing it manually is kind of useful to give some variation. Then probably let the let's turn the frequency of the modulation, the filter modulation going on, just so it's a little less industrial. Then bring in, start to bring in some melodic elements. In this case, using a preset called Water Temple on this one. I may then sort of switch to some strings, and then holding a note, then start to bring in some sort of sequence. Could just be a single one up there. Could actually change the notes of that. And you can see on this single held note here, because I'm pressing harder, I've got some control over the modulation, which is good because it means I can play a note on here and then introduce the filter manually with one hand. And then once one of those sequences going, I could potentially put a drum beat in, but do it in the background so that in step mode, this is more of a structure. So that you're slowly getting a beat coming in. Thanks for all the likes, by the way. I've got 3 likes so far. Perhaps you're all waiting for a performance. I'm just sort of explaining the working of a performance. I'm slowly reducing the reverb, letting the sort of 4/4 take over, and then perhaps, and this is where things could get crazy. So you can hear that was slightly out of sync. So it may be a case of me putting in a live sequencer. So I think on, as I was explaining before, let's just turn the sequencer on. So that's out of time. So I'm going to erase that one, put it into real-time record, see if it remains in sync. Well, that's a short sequence length, so again just erase that. Sometimes you may be doing this live, which is part of the fun. So it seems to be staying in sync now, which is pretty cool. So if you noticed on the just from a sequencer performance side of this, that's in sync with these two now. Let's put a second note in. If I turn it off, if I then reinitiate it, in theory it should still be in time because it's still receiving the clock and it's in the background still going through that sequencer loop. So let's see if that works. So that then becomes a performance tool, but you kind of got to record it in, and if anyone knows, any MicroFreak experts can leave things in the comments of when you're using clock and not MIDI, how you can reinitiate or how you can restart a sequence, because it seems to be just a pulse and it just has its own thing, because that's quite useful. You could be playing along. And then if you wanted to move on to something else and set this into the sequence mode, because then you could start to do other things like bring in like the Neutron sequence in this case. Thanks Tonal for the likes. Yeah, it's sort of delayed. I see things way after everyone else, so still showing 5 likes here. Sometimes you'll also ask a comment and I won't see it till 2 or 3 minutes later. So there's lots of weird things go on when you do lives. So what was I doing? Yes. So that was just a sort of quick insight into the structure. All the time I'll be mixing usually locally, so that means from the instrument rather than in modular, because the my normal modular rack, I'm not often mixing from a couple of these, but because we've got local control of sounds, on each instrument. I often mix from these, so for example, it's actually useful to do that. And obviously on the 110 here I've got 3 or 4 little volume controls I'm going to use. So if you think I have a MicroFreak, I love it, but you're certainly much more experienced. Yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting instrument. There's so many things in it. One of the things I like to just do is let's just go to a non-sequencer thing. One thing I like to do is just, might start from that sound, but just changing the engine types can suddenly take it into a completely different area. And suddenly you've got quite a nice little backgroundy sound for if you're doing a live performance. If you want to get a bit weird, get the reverb going. So it's great for that kind of thing where you're just changing the engines. Not changing presets here, just and then changing the parameters within that. Another thing I didn't talk about was using the LFO, using the clock. Because you can do sync LFO on here as well, which I'll be doing in the performance. So I'm just adjusting the engine type. There's a noise one as well. So that's cool for if you just want to do a quick adjusting the rhythmic-y thing. I suppose if you put it into sequence mode, a bit of a drum beat. Are you going to play back? Yeah, play back eventually. So sorry, I was just doing that on the fly, just to make a point. It's a really easy instrument to get around and just try different things out, so it's pretty cool. What am I doing? Oh yeah. So, no more questions, and I'll get on with the performance. Just coming up to the hour. In fact, just as I said the word hour, that was it. So, yeah, see you on the other side. It's a little more... slightly more uncontrolled, this little setup, than my usual Analog 4 or a nicely constructed, architected modular setup. So particularly with the sync going to these two, it's going to be interesting to see how that pans out. So let's see how we go. So hopefully you can enjoy the performance. This is where I'll put a chapter marker. I need something to indicate where the chapter marker is. Perhaps I'll put say goodbye, Baby Yoda. Well, not goodbye, sorry. Goodbye from... You're not saying anything? Your drink? No. Right, off we go. Turn the mic off. I'm now going to go to speaker power. I've been using headphones just because I don't want the sound coming out the speakers.